Hi, my name's Paul Hawkins. I'd like to read some poems from a book called Ghostsift Omen that came out last year. This one is untitled. A dead fish floats on a wooden fish. Further precisions connecting the worship. Obscene honour in some detail, attempts at paganism are successful. The gloom is lightened by an atrocious theology full of errors. City of summary. This one is also untitled. She may discern the symptoms, light sweats, heartburn, that sad part of the instep. Crane up the long drop, plate slightly underweight, meaning silent, leaks and conviction is high. Heads down, let us, Night's ear. Paid in silences, less than minor, a stamp in a harem to bed, the same dog-eared Kerouac, snot stream, featherlight, wineglass, more than buttonhole. I am nose to nose with Keno Reeves. Untitled. Late records, a wisp, flying coats, every egg thumped down, and imagine the tiny light code, ripple of shell snapping, rock, boiling tar. To the organ thundering, the roof driving, each stone to extremity, and still we posit the autistic Maurice Duruffel, reality at Errol. They dumb their doorframe at the sea of corn. Go grieve over your absence. Back in darkness, the radio reads the ships and a recording of the ocean. Nip a big square tincture of failed geography. It's salty. The waveform a joke. Have a good nose for gold, patient, sherry, shy, the trick of peat smoke, shut inside thought. Tonight. Difference. Health circle closed. The milk float dead to the world. Again, precisely 12 years separate the burnt of what I know. It's micro-episode, like on acetate, suave in the dark, infinite sensitivity. This is no romantic. Everything else, it is a backwash. Celebrate. The travel lodge. Black heart zipped to hit the roads while she rides the dead phone, frightened amongst her own grave goods. Martyrdom. Loose inside its drums slides into the dusk, babes of voluntary orphanhood left in bleat and shiver. Leaf pattern duvet cover. Stencil your bandage above our heads along the trail of bread with big haversacks, and at 27 quid a model of Christ. Bathroom as a sly defraud. Blood debt, the semi-bastard title. This is called A. And something perhaps marking the flare of the velocipede, the thousand sisters beneath the light bulb hangs the world. Poor horoscopes. What hope is there for the plain in flames or ruins, your wife blind? Step out. Today you are special, woman in the windshield, a mask on a stick, as grey-eyed rocket. The road floods like sad trombones, when somewhere she fills the dark rows of this incident, chained to grate. Imperial. Is it normal to get this wet? Months of jaw, wind ground, over a bridge, no trade, the floor, the night, the flag, the flag. 12 o'clock, Dronley, August the 20th. Specifically 351/366, the deciduous part of handover. I was the two eyes, the solitary years later. Most of us can take our bearings, the machines shut down, the distant city all clockwork as if solid print. The vacuum of Costa Rica. The smell deeply swims itself like a flick knife, the blue job with a handle still on. Your hangover thunders away, featureless steeps, known dimly for its lead mines, throat singing and turnips, with the taste of liquid acetylene. 2 fingers and everything turns into midnight, a pin, a biro. In the morning, trousers stunned, a little spong for a leisurely tour of the second-hand bookstalls. Around midday. You make the dubbed Polish game show roguishly the last stroke. You wear in your head for a fortnight. You've developed nothing but books about art. Monday was Twombly. Brilliant wank before tea time. You share across the white field of conclusive identification. In the stillness you make thin. Gently. Fixing your quantum mechanics, a sniff of a beer mat, and that would be fuck Einstein. Words like an infinite shadow board, each one on time. A good sign. The wall, fingered by God, bracing your head in the balance. Clear elocution, as if the brink of the great polarities kick-started the next hour off its course. Infraworlds, personal space, ambient, superimposed over silence, virtually nothing. Voltaire. Buenos Aires, early evening. The cassette and your Walkman. Nothing but tape hiss. A kettle half opened. A spatter of bandolion from the bar opposite. Over blink, small glasses. Metaphysics or literature. Know in an hour the subject of women. One girl freshing. Whack, volume, this bit a gurgle, a chair leg, parquet, off down an alley. Consolidate the usual, badly lit, a train between dusk, and his audacity rendered as pastoral, sensitive, derelict is humanly adequate at the end of the century. Grinding 4 lines of nothing. The taxman is having it. Pep talk by sweet sherry, meat paste on your shoulder. For fuck's sake, get real, son. The poem is what you had forgotten to turn off. The whole snib shut and parcel, Beatles chucked on the doormat, the X-ray notice, the warranty sale. the jealous, the badly reviewed, the nutter you met at the workshop. Now enter the black and white carry-on films in your poems. You sit on that absolute moron, the angle poise through sparks, buggering the typography. Your writing you cannot remember. If it was, handshaking to scream, the neighbours pounding annoyance, unfortunately, semi-detached, the first floor. A fizz is a door, the door, no door. And finally, return of the book. Astonishment at the universe, the same as rendering or whatever. Thank you. Hope you've enjoyed the Prague Microfestival 2020, the virtual version. And take good care. Look after yourself. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Sarah Scottthorne. I'm going to read some poems for you today. I'm a Bristol poet and I like to experiment and perform, but today I'm going to be sitting. This is from my book, chapbook, The Bloodhouse. The stairs creak voices, ketamine thuds bleed through a single skin of brick. Floorboards leak every secret. The clock reverses. Intermittent GABA, radar, moon. Cats scream. I scream. Howl my longings into cotton sheets. I scratch at the floor. Draw words in the mist of breath on pain. Look through letters lit orange by the light of the city night. At my beloved street below. Bodies crawl, fumbling for keys, staring into shadows. My hand-printed curtains float, lifting up as the city sweat billows into my room. The shouts of children climb through my windows like burglars. Angry mothers scream and drag them back out. This house breathes for me, joy splintering with love. The beat of slamming doors hides the sound of the past that is buried alive in the red brick cellar below. Okay, and this one is called Bloodhead. Delicious wanted to lick the sparkle from his eyes, eat his words. She smiled casually, replying to his quip. She felt the drip from her nose and wiped it with her hand. Searching for a tissue in her bag, it was blood. Her nose was bleeding, just a little. Her head began to sweat, ears ached. She had to scratch her scalp. Her hand came away with blood under the fingernails. He kept looking at her. She could taste something strong. He mumbled, "Your gum is bleeding." More blood. Dark teeth, insolvent smile, fingers crossed behind her back. He pretended not to notice as blood dripped through the strands of her hair. It was her bloodhead. She hadn't prepared, and it was showing. His jaw dropped. He said, "Your blood is black." Black as her father's blood. She started to cry. She should never have eaten his rotten heart. She should never have killed him. And this is Soldier's Dinner. Boiled boot shine, hand touched by boy tears. Cookies, M&Ms dripping alpha time. Dream tick-tock tootsies, pound cakes fighting for warmth. The clunk of peanut butter jelly. Radio impaled by mashed metal. Surface of bare arms in heat. Cheese spread cold. I moulded your sweat to my national eye, Gatorade-like mixes of 50 caliber songs spitting your dark trench radar. Heartbeat, syncopated to your shaking, bullets ricochet, coffee wall blatting, T-trigger sparking hunger. Phantom pain of a child soldier. Speaking tongues of discipline dipped in chemical toilet paper, money crank pick, melted spoon, dead matches, gas, name tags, etc. Salt, sugar, cocoa shakes, hot sauce, incontinence, toast over our bodies. Okay, and I'd like to read, this has been published in fact a few different anthologies. Okay, it's called Escadabacas Escapan de su boca. Strings come from my eyes. They spread across the room and out of the window, turning into wires. My grey eyes cry mercury. It runs down the silver strands, dripping into oily slicks by the old garages. Lights a flash fire. The flames spread up the garden path, roaring towards the house. The doors always open and shut very fast, slamming for the fun of it. I open my mouth. Black beetles escape. Crawl over my body, The house sighs, cracking mortar. The house starts to turn again, thundering as it rips through the earth. Oh, house, my wires will get tangled. The house is disrespectful. It turns a full 360 degrees. My beetles run in all directions. They trail down the wires, hundreds from my mouth, nipping at my lips, calling in the clippers. Hide the wires, a face, a question. What have you been doing today? Okay, and this is Semblance. It's a little chapbook from Mabarchi Press. Fu Mum. For God's sake, I'm not trying to shock or make a point, but I do enough fucking cooking at home, so when I come away, I want to pick up a sword or a pole or anything I can get my dirty little hands on and chop the air and shout and get all primal. Till sweat pours down the side of my face and I get fucking red and my lungs burn and I make you look twice. Just don't get in my way when I'm in a slashing, cutting frame of mind. Sonnet 67. File sword parts SVG. Sword _parts .svg. SVG file. Nominally 36B or C. 550 times 310 pixels. Between 10 and 12 stone. File size 30 KB. This image rendered as PNG 5'9", in other widths 20px, 500px, 1000px, 200px. 46 years and progressing. Description, English, labelled diagram of sword. Bleached hair, scabbard, financially viable. Française, diagramme avec chocolat, la bidon, la pie chardonnay et de sang forêt. Date April 2014. Status, sexually active. Source, derivative of file, genetic imperfections. And then I've got one more to read. I really love computer code, and messing with languages that I don't totally understand, but I enjoy the sound of. This is called As Island, and it was in Dostoevsky Wannabe Bristol. As Island, group by Island Contract, ID. Monday, 15th, 1st, 2018, 23:29. Here you go. 0 hours contract. CP2 is null. Except we pull into select contract ID. Min, bracket, DIY, bracket as date form. Max, bracket, DY, bracket. As date to from slip road. Select arching into darkness. Contract, die, slip road. Row number over one way, penny slot steering wheel. Partition by contract, order by. Invoice days, row number over. Partition by contract, order by contract. As group, invoice days in the pitch. We are anonymous, find the missing days. Arching into darkness, invoice days in the pitch. Invoice days in the pitch. Invoice days in the pitch. Select CP contradict D die. Into #T select contract ID. From table CC care packages. Contradict algorithms in the pitch. In the pitch. Dates as D select contract ID. Where did I between CP from and in the pitch is null. We're anonymous. And CP deleted is null. And CP active is null in the pitch. And CP from at end date. And CP2 at start date. 2 is null in the pitch, except in the pitch we are anonymous. Let's contradict daddy-o, pitch, pit, pit, cha, 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 from table CC patient's invoice in B-ite, pit, itch, blight, cross, deleted as null. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my reading.
Oscillation of the eccentric crank is mechanically operating a pumping mechanism, is forcing vaguely nutritive slurry, total parenteral sustenance, TPS, from an armature outside through the aluminium tissue, manto slurry, deposition, decayal, withering the skin, and softening the meatless fascia is grating the ribcage into bone meal against pocky aluminum. The young boy in coveralls is cutting the coastline perimeter of Demonaz Island into a pressboard, pegboard panel. For the ADA cartographer is receiving a pegboard simplification of the coastline of Demonaz Island from his assistant, who is attaching a plumb line from a hole in the pegboard and inscribing its vector down across the panel, and through a series of plumb line vectors in a variety of orientations is finding the centroid of the island, on which the cartographer is delineating Demonaz Island Transit Camp on his official chart. Nauseating coldness rushing into the apartment massive without my overcoat. ADA greatcoat draping over the small bookshelf, concealing the man is rifling through, is peeling brittle end papers from the books with the apex of a dagger, is pointing into our crockery and cookware. Nadia miserably, darkly, laughing, weeping at what the ADA goon is imagining of my stealth for concealing a 200-page article manuscript in a teacup. And the absence of food is scopically limiting, is ransacking to prying apart the laminations of plywood cabinet doors and drawing the dagger through caulking between precast concrete wall panels and dissecting the foamy backer rod extractingly uncoiling across the matte floor. I'm genuinely fearful of his cutting away her scalp and pounding open Nadia's skull with the pommel of his dagger and transcribing the honest light of facsimile projecting from the crater. And he is standing like a tent in his greatcoat in front of the door where two other goons in coveralls are entering for my bodily apprehension, all oblivious to their quarry. My article is lying in the lid of a paper box, methodically, stackingly, and collating its cover pages stating, "Letter to the Demon," concerning the assassination of Katia, in full bleed, elegant reverse contrast hand lettering, are removing me from my dwelling in the massive on Missouri Boulevard. Blackout, Nadia, gray space, filtration away from her bodily safekeeping into shell game with skulls full of black blood, draping, itchy, black wool, pericranium, cannot luminance, cannot relief. Is rhythm a possibility without sequentiality of events, but in a static arrangement across which the notation of or indexing of aspirationally rhythmic constructions is perceptible, yet is requiring an imaginative insertion of movement or possibility of parallax against which relative positioning is gaugeable from one rhythmic body to a benchmark in the distance. The event is finite in one axis and expansive beyond comprehension or beyond necessity on the planarity. The entire topography of my body is contacting other bodies, pilingly, crushingly, cannot breathingly, wheezing, gravitational additive constriction, with no sensation, only analytically surveying the wafering of negative space. Touchingly, contact points are sensations of analysis, not valuable to the imagination, cannot sensation with a kneecap, cannot movement, restraint by crushingly dead weight of my people, cannot respiration, provision for hermetically looping oxygen production in each cell of the ingot, cannot vision, I'm not desirous of visual, screaming is muffling, the leathery wings of the poini, vibrating in a fringing, softly sounding formation of draconi, vomiting molten aluminum, macro. I'm seeing the grain of fabric, cakingly, dirt shit, scabbiness, living organisms with minimal overhead clearance are preparing the surface with the devourment of organic materials with the properties antagonistic to the bondage of molten aluminum to flesh. Moth larvae are eating the fibers in our thin clothing. I'm away from the dwelling without an overcoat, bartering for tea beneath a dark window, lamplight in the window, apprehension on the sidewalk, Nadia's shoulder blades against the window. My people cannot copromesis, cannot swollen in the encapsulation of aluminum casting. The tormenting stability of encapsulation is overriding the scorching torture of liquid aluminum. Cannot interpunct. No spatial, distinguishingly and sculptural live ossification of cell block conception of relational. We are packing into the ingot, lying ceilingly in immediate proximity. Support network suppression, cannot fellowship. Moth froth of Tiniola bacilliella, attempting whispering, without labial, cannot M, cannot P, cannot B. I've the realization that I'm aboard a rail car. guanaplegia, moth froth of tinea pellionella, gently rocking with no inertial effects on my extremities in the buoyed eye of the breathless body pile tourniquet buoyed. Cells cannot reconfiguration. My liquefaction is swaying, my equilibrioception is clackety, vomiting malabsorption feces into the aluminium tissue as gravity draining xylem, is forcing differential pressuring, transportingly delivery via the slurry column. Onward is momentum, exhalation, onward, clack, swaying, threadbare, trousers and sphincter is gasping, plugging with the forcing aluminum impaction into rectal negative space, paradoxical diarrhea through enterocutaneous fistula burn wounds, cannot bowel movement, under the skin and inside the long bone marrow tunnel, the noxious reeking of the crucible smoke, glimpsingly crescents and slivers of the trailing across the sky, is precipitating down into the rail car. Acrid kiln smoke drafting from chimney aromatic of warmth is not enough warmth, exacerbation of cryoablation. In the body pile, the adjustment of posing is tantalizing but impossibly stiff. Cramping is not unpleasant nostalgia of the musculature, constraining with crushing liquefaction of aluminum at 1680.67 degrees R in a freezing gale, proving the deixis of burning through flesh, dermis, adipose, musculature, skeletal exposure, S-char, conditional flesh-eating molten metal is cooling into an ingot of casting medium in the negative space of the body pile. Clothing burning, lacy clothing of moth devourment, the skeleton of the caverniculus exilee is lying in the depressions of its aluminum body chamber. Pooling of geotrichum candidum, penetration into porous aluminum casting. In a rail yard overlooking Lake Baikal, fecal diagnostic panels from ball valve tapping phreatic zone liquid of the nutritive tissue is draining into clinical tubes. Exilee urine treatment in the urine processor assembly, UPA, is commingling with condensate recovery in the slurry vessel. Penetrative sarma gales of the circumbical, swayingly, freezingly, and thawingly, artesian slurry vesicle, diarrhea cannot consciousness, contrarily the existence of the body heat in infinite events across the steppe is not the existence of the body heap stationary in each event, is not me with some enduring proximity to Nadia, to familiarity or stability. Exhalation is not a radial concept of further and further. Exhalation is a recentering, and exhalation from the refreshing of each center point, not the distancing of the exilee from home place, but annihilation of the very acknowledgement of home place as a geographic ideal. Erasure of a locus of hopefulness, ceaselessly wailing, each home place, each investment in stasis is precipice encampment crumblingly tumbling down the sloughing of the mountainside, glimpsing all of the appealing crags and pinnacles, recognizing nothing, and fog enshrouding the mountaintop. Is there a mountaintop, or are we lying in the debris field of a crater? Sky vault of oilcloth, vaulting fabric of the sky is flutteringly, indexically, is fraying, webby, gauzy snowfall and snow melt through the distantly threadbare oculus, the illuminization of Kevlar mittens, leather palms, and wool lining. Fibrous, falling, threadbare mountainside is whispering to the geometric cascading with dividers, and the spotlight is flaring a tangibly stellate figuration above the patent leather visor of the commandant, is floating down to a resting point on the specular metal of the dividers, are pegging radii outward and outward across the cartographic depiction. Asleep in bed is bondage and bedclothes atonia, cannot drifting away, cannot nodding or slumping or relaxation. Dreaming has the requirement of peacefulness. The atonia of entombment is rageful, cannot relaxation and disuse atonia. Hide and die in carbomocloline, slurry torpor habitat or raging against the dracon poine. Slurry mixture of carbostat in the slurry medium delivery vehicle. The entombment harboring troglodynic aspirations for daylight on the dermis, on the clothes, warming dead cave Nadia, Nadia far, far away, further away Nadia setting behind the earth. Bodily, meltingly dripping skeleton of the balmy steppen low point to the scions, ascendingly Stanovoys, cooling the flesh onto my skeleton, casting adipose material, diffeomorphic into the aluminum vesicle, my chamber, my formation, my limitation, fully bodily erasure of scalding, geographically deictic thermal burning, is dependent on the air temperature, although damaging the dermis at a minimum is unavoidable. Vection, lingual screaming through the tissue, death wheezy whispering, breathly clicking through the tissue, the irregular breathing of weeping. Deferral of domestic uncertainty is the construction of a cord and the compassing from the endpoints of the cord with equal radii, whose interlinking intersections are serving as the endpoints of a radical line, whose intersection is finding the center point of the cord, and through which is the construction of a perpendicular diameter, and construction of a second cord utilizing the identical construction such that the two diameters are intersecting at the center point. New center point, new radius, inscription, new chord, attempts, new location, the stellate figuration luminously sloughing to the paper, Dracolastgok is the location for exhalation and involuntary railcar transporter entombment, and molten aluminum is casting in the negative space between exiles where a loose weave of wax paper straws are weavingly casting a xylemic conduit tissue. Warmly, female voice hesitantly is describing her emotional connection to human cadavers. Cross-lamination with tinny, reverberant, yelling woman. Food slurry is pumping into the vesicle between skin and over rib cage, and aluminum casting medium pooling food slurry is freezingly pulling away from the skin, warming expansively. Nostrils cannot peristalsis. Aluminostricture whispering through the aluminum tissue. Aluminum cannot tracheory. Megalovalvata bicolensis, spiraling, sphinctering, sliming, cannot eyelid, wax paper, ignition, metal smoke, and pyrolization of aluminum cenospheres, and lingual pyrography, antioline pooling, salting, the hydrology of the sky is raining corrosion on the body pile and salting the lips of the exilees drinking from the tissue. Generally silent weeping is palpably aromatic through the tissue saline vaporization, cannot F, cannot V, the thinly gurgling drowning on food slurry against labialization of aluminum, cannot kissing, cannot favorite, cannot parabola, cannot paving, cannot bivouacking, haphazard arrangement of straws into the casting is allowing for no coordination of tissue orifices with mouth holes or nostrils is no assurance of nutritive administration. The poini descending on the oculus of the cattle car, vomiting molten aluminum over the scrambling, heaping exilees. Hot gale at the Dracolastgok seaside, whistling daylight is seemingly thinly articulating the stramineous tissue capillaries. Nothing visible but sensation across the eye spots. Activation is the vection of horrendously strident creaking, warming, expandingly, my entirety of aluminum sleep cell, paralyzed cell, involuntary endurance arrival at a transit camp on the peninsula, at a desolate location centrally distant from the coastline in each direction. Cannot bacterial vaginosis, cannot pablum, cannot favela, cannot bumping, cannot beneficium, the exilee ingot hoisting from the flat car into the flat bed of an auto transporter is crossing the strait to Demonaz Island Transit Camp through strata of fence lines and fortifications onto a turntable at the centroid of the island. Beside an armature is hoisting and overturning the container is releasing the ingot of exilees onto a shaking table platform where hosings are coupling to the ball valve tappings for fluid drainage. Inversely, at the top of the tissue network for fluid injection is flooding liquid gallium through the tissue is promoting molecular embrittlement of the shattering aluminum, casting bodies scattering across the shaking table or scrambling across the flat platform, clawing and covering their eyes, throwing themselves from the platform to the dirt, terminal burrowing into the hard soil, going nowhere or scraping their faces against gravel, back and forth into a growing crater filling with blood, drowning in blood. The auto transporter is ferrying away toward the gateways in the fortifications are closing shut behind its departure.
Objects at that time were translucent, held in suspension. The street lamps shed a faint light into the room. Light is the natural agent that stimulates sight and makes things visible. We slit open the ink sacs one by one. Anxiety arises from having all paths, and thus no path, open before you. A colony of ants behaves like a single organism. Word order is an elusive presence, a residual signal. Dog, tonguing pool of water. Dramatic increase in neuron firing has been recorded. Physical withdrawal symptoms have triggered overstimulation of the autonomic nervous system. The enamel plaque itemised a wholesaler in snakeskin, struck off, a taxidermist, and a qualified Gauleiter. In order to draw a boundary, one has to operate on both sides of this threshold. Such an individual must be considered unfortunate. The witness added that she did not believe she had been conversing with a particularly noteworthy spirit. Silver point, that's right, on paper prepared with a coating of powdered bone, creating a fine indelible line composed of metal fragments. I remember your face, but never a name. To be removed. A skeletal frame into which compartments are fitted, one fly-blown mirror and a moth-eaten silk partition, so named from the bell shape of early prototypes. It was some occasion, this. Remote sulphur mine, a cabin in the forest, the bloody hair-matted mall, an abandoned sawmill, makeshift and ramshackle. A chain of logs courses slowly downriver, grinding at the pack ice. The chorus shrieks while heaving at the capstan. As in all acts of translation, an erosion is already taking place. A pyre of timber is stacked for the incineration. From one perspective, this is an archive of neurological disaster. He justifies himself by arguing that any error is an achievement in itself. Part of the alchemy is the sudden shift in key, whereby impulses received at synapses are transmitted along the branched extension of a nerve. How would I have felt if this had happened to me? You're not sure whether you're reading or being written. He scrambles through the cobbled streets. All other sensations are shocked out of existence. The dynamic of crisis-catharsis is repeated throughout, a spiral or vortex, a circular pattern of currents in an ocean trench. Interesting, futile. I set out at a loss. It was a Thursday, that constant hissing in my ear. We were limited to things. The crux here lies in a steadfast refusal to take place. Origin is misuse. A subatomic particle has no integrity, is, quote, incorrigible. I'm here following the statistical description given by the witness. In a shop window have been placed a battered musical instrument, one bag of ash, a pack of dog-eared taro, a volcano-shaped lump of molten plastic, day-glow, string and wire, along with fuses and electric triggers of unspecified use. However, I am refusing to make any decisions today. The disease resulting from these acts was summoned. Grandiloquent names have been timetabled. You're quite catastrophic, etc. A colourless material comprises the living part of any cell. The psychiatric report confirmed the subject's adamantine fragility. There was no going back. Research indicates that some organisms may retain memory within bodily tissue. I thought your moniker sounded familiar. Spectators gambled on the outcome. It's funny you should ask that question, he said, scalpel in clenched fist. The novel is set around two people who share a tragic past. A track of scar tissue runs the length of her sternum. Her entrance into the room mirrored a dream as several nights before. Aviator goggles, flecks of foam rimming the lips, the raised pistol, a white secretion oozing from her vagina, the supermarket trolley abandoned to an oily canal. The judge affirmed that her statement claiming the defendant had once toiled as an assassin would have to be taken into consideration. I used to have my own bell. Someone stole it. It has become apparent that light consists of energy quanta called photons, which behave somewhat like waves and somewhat like particles, but nonetheless, it is very quiet today hereabouts. When the location of the seizures is pinpointed, any affected organs will be removed and destroyed. Such is the agony of foreknowledge when combined with an inability to alter the future. Crisis apparitions. What time are you leaving? Catachresis is incorrect usage of a word, its function indeterminate, a tool or agent blindly devoted to an adversary's destruction. Literally, a soul of mud, atrophy of the muscles, a tongue in the larval state, gill flaps twitching. See, he's already working within a tripartite structure. Skin feels amphibian to the abdomen. Same impression. Ground has been lost. Wearing the mutinous cockade today would not be savvy, could even prove fatal. Overawed by such assaults as these, the envoys resigned en masse. Stale bread, smooth stones, and a circuit board have been crammed into my pockets. Contraction is a term used to explain the doctoring that began. I must forewarn you. My circus training has been rigorous. I reach out and touch, connect, and the voltmeter twitches. I recall this morning the leg of a spider afloat in the communal shower. By the summer there was hardship and the threat of disaster. But the prolonged absence of a thing unspecified persists. That mound we're passing was long ago a hill fort, a natural temple and omphalos. Its position led people down the dorsal spine and hogback of the south. I can barely cope with these infinite varieties of loss. Disembodied voice, a brace of parental units. A feeling of vulnerability lingers. For months now I've been trading on the orbital. Mouths on stalks, dowels in quiver. The streets are about so wide. Parts hands to demonstrate. Invertebrates, there may be up to 4 chambers with 2 atria and 2 ventricles, a lung of clay, let the dry land appear, etc. The completed shape is a trapezoid, a vast rectangle with sloping upper edge. Clouds descend to fill the vacuum. Sky full of smoke, water falling in droplets as creeping snails crush underfoot. There was once a machine, he claims, that could manufacture flammable gas by splitting up the hydrogen and oxygen into precisely required parts. Now he says he has gangrene and cysts all over his torso. I have an exposed vertebra at the top of my spine, a gleaming white nub that signals neglect. We are busy comparing atrocities, irredeemable in our virtue. Acid rain sanitizes the surface. Apologies are withheld. I'm so excited about nothing. Shell-toothed. Lip split, itchy phantom limb. In my spare time, I am dedicated to inertia. In my spare time, I am digging a cellar beneath the compound, a storage unit for stockpiled quicklime and nerve agent. Informal social gatherings have been disfigured by ritualized crawling. The whole industry has collapsed. I'm about in the middle of a life sentence. He then conveyed in a whisper the exact moment when our termination was to take place. In the midst of this schism in the concert of opinion, to hear his simple language was a blessing. Forbidden to talk for a few minutes, I can finally grasp what we're dealing with. A crust is forming. She took a deep breath and let it out. Her eyes opened for the first time in months. Those who refused to join the Exodus have been living dormant under the ground since the last ice age. A name from history has been given to the inner circle, especially the 5 unpopulars. Navigation by means of maritime errancies has led us to some deserted islet. The roof slates have developed a resistant film of livid green lichen. Peat burns in the hearth, filling the interior of the hovel with acrid smoke that stings the eyes and settles on the tongue. One man fell into a deep sleep and suffered a vision. Radical reflection must go further back and seize this theme, within the horizon which grants it significance. Informed of his years of hermitage, it was agreed the envoy should come in person and tell the delegates of his discovery. He gazed at my palm for a few moments before raising his eyes and asking what happened on that winter day in 77. It was his custom to walk about unarmed, inspecting the excavations, ecstatic with the glory of sunset from the battlements. I schlepped back to the compound with all the apparatus he had requested. None of these disparate objects made sense in terms of defence. I hope he's not manning the cryptograph when a real war descends. He reported that he'd seen a huge wheel turning in the sky, and within the wheel was another wheel, and so on. I have inherited the magnetized corpse of an abandoned empire.
All right.
So I guess looking at the muted microphone at the bottom of the screen, that'll be a good cue if somebody wants to join the conversation or add something. They can just unmute themselves. And so
exactly.
Okay. They want to respond. I guess.
All right. I think we're live.
Good evening. Happy Halloween, everyone. Welcome to the PMF 2020 Publishing Roundtable. I'm David Wichnar. I'm managing editor of Equus Press, and I'll be the moderator of this debate, which aims to discuss the state of the arts in independent publishing in the wonderfully horrendous year of 2020. I'm delighted to be joined tonight by four important practitioners of independent fiction and publishing: Simon Hutchinson, Manuel Marrero, Sarah Scott-Thorne, and Andrew Wilt. To briefly introduce the speakers, let me just say that Simon co-directs Hedra Felix, an independent publisher of literature and visual art. She founded the press in 2018 with the inaugural issue of Mycelia, a magazine dedicated to the weird and the eerie. According to their mission statement, Hedra was founded to provide a publishing house dedicated to experimental writing. Manuel is the founder, editor-in-chief of Expat Press, which over the past 7 years of its activity has published 16 books, 3 zines, and 1 record. He's also a writer, author of the novels Thousands of Lies and Not Yet. As he says himself, Expat Press is founded on the creed that, quote, "we take risks." And this is important because the mainstream is either risk-averse or intolerant, and this is anathema to art. Together with Paul Hawkins, Sarah co-runs Hesterglog Press and is a poet and physical performer with several books to her credit, notably The Bloodhouse and Semblance. Hesterglog are dedicated to publishing mainly experimental poetry that cuts across forms, drawing, and I quote, "positive links between non-profit and literary, artistic, and political worth." Last but not least, Andrew founded 1111 Press in 2018 as a combination of his passion and purpose: writing, business, providing opportunities for underdog writers, and fostering engagement in the arts. 1111 publishes innovative literature of all forms and varieties and believes in, and I quote, "the freedom of artistic expression, the realization of creative potential, and the transcendental power of stories." A fifth ghost member of the panel will be John Treffry of Inside the Castle, whose reading we just heard alongside Paul's and Sarah's, who couldn't join us live for the rescheduled Halloween debate, but has shared some of his thoughts on the topics to be covered here. And speaking of ghost members, I'd also like to invite those of you watching us online to send us your questions, both general and specific to individual respondents, which we will collect on the YouTube channel chat, and we'll gladly address towards the closing of the panel. Now, to set the stage and get us started, I'll briefly paraphrase the notes, questions, and provocations I've circulated among the panel's participants and our speakers, and will invite their thoughts and responses. So the primary motivation behind the panel is the conviction that publishing books under the conditions of late capitalism is a paradoxical venture, as books themselves are paradoxical commodities. They come with price tags and pre-packaged with marketing in order to compete for buyers' attention and consumption. And yet, at the same time, if there should be anything to them, they need to aim to be more than commodities, to resist easy consumption. They should aim to participate in a superstructure of cultural dialogue. We, as publishers, all want our books to sell well, if for nothing else than to enable us to produce more of them. Or at least we want them to reach as many readers as possible. And yet again, we need to do more than basic marketing. We need to have conversations around the books we publish, with the aim of fostering the non-monetary creation of community in which these books will live. And those conversations, if again there should be anything to them beyond mere back scratching and navel gazing, need to be more than just polite. If they are to open new horizons, they need to broaden the limits of the permissible and the sayable. They need to challenge and upset, not just confirm and approve. Especially in as radically challenging and difficult a year as 2020, in which so much of normalcy has come under critical scrutiny. We feel the need to rethink what we do as publishers in the increasingly surreal cultural reel of the times. We've come to inhabit a state of almost universal commodification, governed by the commercial dictates of success metrics based on the 30-second attention span fostered by social media, an attention span averse to the slow activity of real reading. Under these circumstances, we as publishers find ourselves combating the many seductions and co-options of Amazon and its various unfulfilling fulfillment programs, and warily embracing some of the saving graces of the print-on-demand system, however problematic. So what better platform to speak of what we do as publishers than a publishing roundtable such as this one? So to start us off, relatively close to home, I would like to address and invite your thoughts to one of the mottos of Echo's Press, which is keeping literature bad for business. And here I wondered about your publishing venture's take on the resistance to the commercial imperatives of mass print. And I wondered how such resistance is possible, why is it needed, and what non-monetary modes of book production and distribution you yourselves use and why. And I wanted to ask Manuel to start us off. At Expat, I understand you're interested in the convergence between books and other media. And ever since the pandemic, you've been actually offering your titles free for download as PDFs. How does that work practically? What's the ethos?
Well, actually, credit to Andrew and John Treffry and other people who led the charge on offering our books for free online. I think it was the right thing to do. I mean, we were just plunged into the deepest recession since the 1930s. So, I mean, it doesn't make sense to charge people for content. You know, information should be free. As far as the overlap between the mediums, I just think that literature has a lot to learn from other mediums like film, online, like you said, the kinds of things that cater to short attention spans. In terms of the sensory, in terms of books that invite non-traditional engagement, like, say, perusal or like non-linear engagement, in terms of books that are like objects, special objects, sacred objects that people want to have in their home. I mean, my friend James Newlick said it best, and I don't know, it's not an original idea, but books are a perfect technology. I mean, this at the time he said it, he mentioned that they still outnumber Kindles on public transit. I don't know if it's still the case, because I was on public transit the other day, and I saw mostly cell phones. But I do think books are a perfect technology. I don't think they're going away. And we need to, a lot of small presses that I see are sort of like reckoning with how to inspire the kind of fervor that other mediums inspire by learning from just other media and how they release things, music, movies, and whatnot. Also social media, because like you said, people have short attention spans. And then, of course, like, we need to preserve the fact that like literature generally is longer form. It's not short form like Twitter or something like that. And we need to cultivate bigger attention spans in that regard, obviously. So I don't know. It's kind of a nebulous issue. I invite further discussion.
Cheers, Manuel. Definitely more discussion will be had on that subject. Sarah, from what I recall of the prehistory of Hesterblock, Hesterblock underwent a major change by transitioning from handmade zines to a print-on-demand model. How did that work out? How is it working out?
Well, we did start making pamphlets and zines, I would say, in the honeymoon phase of the press. There's the Bloodhouse in the original, and it's got like tissue in paper and photo on the front glued on, and they're all different colours, and we handmade them all. And I learned to make books at art college, and Paul was like, no, that will never work, but it did. We got a laser printer. We made hundreds and hundreds of them, and we sold so many. This was a massive seller. This is Margaret Thatcher's Museum by Anthony Owen, and this is a feminist one, Boston Revolution, all women in there. It was quite nice. Cows with heels on. Fantastic. And we made these. We made them. It's just amazing. And they sell so well, and people love them because they are like tactile and everything like that. And I think, Paul's dad worked in newspapers, so he taught him how to typeset, and then we built a confidence up and went on to print on demand. But because we tried to make it all really low cost, we did most of it ourselves. But then if Paul was working for free, then I ended up paying for a lot more, and debt came. So we're paying off debt, and we're having to figure out a more practical, what's the word, sustainable way, because we're not capitalists, and we're not, but I have 3 children, they only choose. Paul needs to buy shoes. He can't afford to buy shoes. What do we do? This is the reality. We're people with bodies that need to be kept warm and have cloth put on them and stuff like that. So, but then one of the things that we kind of Paul did, but I really supported him on this, was the Protex. And they were completely non-profit making, and they took a lot of work, and there's a lot of them, but they didn't sell many. And Paul often was like, well, why am I doing this then? But they're a massive, amazing archive of experimental art and writing. And I'm really proud of all of them, to be honest. And then it brings up the point of how do you value something? Because that is an amazing archive of creativity that is a record of art from around the world, art and experimental art. And it's priceless, But then in the real world, we're sort of struggling a bit to make sense of the value of all of that. So I would say, that's where we are, valuing pricelessness, but needing to buy shoes. That's... Yeah, I don't know if anyone else can say.
Right. Good point. Sorry, I cut off there for a moment. I hope that wasn't too disruptive. Yeah, we will talk about value creation and evaluation of what we as publishers do in due course. Thank you for that, Sarah. Simone, you set up Hedra Felix, combining a standard publishing business model with a non-profit one, right? I was wondering how that worked.
Yeah. So the idea was that, or is that. Mycelia is a magazine for experimental or like weird literature. It's quite niche. It's kind of a bit intellectual, maybe a bit intimidating to like most potential readers out there. But one of the questions that I was thinking about was, well, it's not maybe going to be a massive like commercial success, and even if it is, I'm not really doing this for a profit. And I thought that one of the reasons why I kind of set it up was because in Glasgow there isn't really much of there hasn't been a kind of consistent literary scene, but there's been a lot of art, there's been a lot of music, and I've been involved in those sort of scenes for a long time living here. And I was thinking, well, Glasgow could really do with something that's about the subculture of literature, and exposes Glasgow residents to that, and maybe could use the profits to provide free training to people on low incomes around Scotland. But obviously being in Glasgow, it would be Glasgow first as a kind of priority for that. And so the idea is that you kind of create an ecosystem of sorts. So the money is kind of circulating around, going back to the people who, through simple material reasons, don't have access to publishing or reading or, yes.
Thank you, Simon. We'll come back to the Glaswegian aspect of your activities in a little bit, short while. Finally, Andrew, you've set up 1111 on the back of the commercial success of your career development book. How did that allow the press to evolve?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's interesting. So coming off of just recently working with a publisher, I had a lot of those experiences working with the traditional setup, and there was a point within the publishing process. It was about when the manuscript was ready and it was about to go to print, that I thought that I could basically use all the same publishing practices that they're doing, but take out the monetary risk. And so, for example, one thing that I wanted to do was I talked to my publisher and I asked them if we could have a PDF of the book available for people who wanted to download it, kind of a pay what you can kind of option, because I don't think that money should be a barrier to writing. There were times in my life where I couldn't afford a book, but I wanted to read it. And so I wanted to give those people the same access to the writing. And so basically, coming off of that experience of working with a publisher, I decided to found 1111 and incorporate all of those things that I wish that my publisher could do. 1111 is in a different field than career development or business or education books, where they have they need to make certain sales goals and whatnot. At 1111, we don't need to make certain sales goals. We believe more on the art over profit. But something to what Sarah was saying is that, as much money as we put into a book, we need to make that back, or else we're not going to have a press anymore, because I can't just keep on putting my own money into the press, because eventually we'll go bankrupt. So there needs to be some sort of balance there. And something else that I'm hearing that I heard from Simone and from Manuel is looking at business structures and looking at how music, for example, a different medium. I think that the music industry has always been ahead of publishing. And so when I started 1111, that's something I looked to also. I looked to see what record labels were doing and streaming media. And I don't know exactly what the answers are, but I do think that there should be more open access to information if it's digital, because it doesn't really cost very much besides on the production side, which everyone at 1111 volunteers their time to do that. On the physical side, I think that because you're buying a physical object, and we are putting money into creating that physical object, there needs to be some money exchanged for that. So.
Sorry, the kind of sampler CD record idea was the idea behind Collected Voices in the Expanded Field, right? Where you would publish these 44 odd chapters by individual writers, right? Just as these independent labels would publish these individual tracks by bands who couldn't afford right, industry backing and stuff.
Right. Yeah. So this summer we published Collected Voices in the Expanded Field, And I won't get too much into the project because there's a whole theory behind putting the project together. But the idea came from when I would go into music stores or record shops in the early to mid 2000s when I was a teenager. And the music that I wanted to hear, they wouldn't play on the radio. So there was no way for me to hear this. And this was just as like MySpace, where people were uploading their music to MySpace. And I don't know if you guys if you remember those times or not, but small record labels would sometimes come together and put a sampler of a whole lot of different bands, and they would sell it at cost. So there'd be 20 or 40 bands on a CD. And the idea is that if you listen to it, you're going to find at least a few more bands that you like. And then you go out and you buy their full-length album. And so that was the idea behind Collected Voices, is that we put, I think 34 authors, that's how many we had, 34 authors we put together, and everyone has at least one book out there in the world published. And it's a way to kind of break through all that noise. And something that we can talk about in a little bit is with the popularity of print on demand, anyone can publish their book. So there's a lot more noise. So we wanted to break through that noise and say, here's a sampler of 34 authors that we support and you should all check out.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, we're gonna talk all things digital and print on demand and the book in the age of digital reproduction in a jiffy. I wanted to mention a second, and I promise last, word from the sponsor, as it were, because Equus is a Prague-based publisher in English, and I wanted to invite. I wanted to take a retro approach of sorts and talk about small presses and the tradition of creating a local community and having this limited reach. Before there was, the internet, print on demand, having this limited reach, forming these tightly knit circles. So I wanted to invite your thoughts on these kinds of concerns and tensions between region and nation, and your publishing ventures policies vis-a-vis locality and regionalism, as opposed to interculturalism, cosmopolitanism. I want to go back to what Simone was saying about her Glaswegian project, Hedra Felix. How does the Glaswegian dimension pan out on the global scale for you?
Sorry. So the local aspect was really about having events tied in with the launches of the magazine. And the specifically local thing for Glasgow is creating events where we have done, obviously not this year because of lockdowns, but to celebrate the launches before, we had invited performers and artists across other traditions or practices to come and present something or curate something on the launch night. So locally, what we were trying to do was for the audience say, look, you've got people working in like moving image or like performance art or music, and they've got shared interests with what these writers are doing. And it's to kind of like connect the literary scene locally with other disciplines, because that was definitely something that was lacking, has been lacking in Glasgow particularly. Edinburgh is I don't know if you know, most people may be familiar with the fact that Edinburgh is a bit of a competitor to Glasgow in all things cultural and sort of politically too. And Edinburgh definitely had that kind of thing happening has had it for quite a long time, but Glasgow just didn't. So that was what the local thing was about. So it's not really about the writing that we publish. Localness is more about the events and the kind of conversation that happens as a consequence of those events. The writing is definitely about bringing international voices who are interested in the shared ideas, experimentalism, like the concept of weirdness. What is the weird? What is weirdness? And because it seems like such a contemporary facet of our culture. We live in very weird times, and we have been for some years. I mean, maybe you could say that's been the case forever, but it does feel like talking about or thinking it through what is weird and what is eerie are really relevant right now. And so we wanted to create an international culture in the magazine, but also prioritize, one or two spaces to Glasgow writers, and hopefully other Scottish writers too, to connect them with the international audience and show those writers, look, you've got something in common with these people living on the other side of the world, and this is interesting.
So the lesson is, if you find yourself outside the center, make a center on your own, make a center of where you are. Manuel, your take on the US at Expat Press served to remind us Europeans who like to generalize about the country and you see it as all uniform, how radically decentralized a place the United States is. Can you share your personal experience of it? I know you're talking to us from New York, one of the epicenters, but still.
Sure. I mean, America is very decentralized, and now with the pandemic, atomized, and not just culturally, but ethnically, in terms of infrastructure. It's a pretty big country. It's extremely diverse. And, I'm a first-generation immigrant from Miami. We have our manufacturing arm down there, and it's a brick-and-mortar printing press. And but here in New York, it's like wherever you live. For Andrew, it's Minneapolis, or wherever you live. We're pillars of the community, and we should act like it. I think, like Dave Hickey, to reference a theorist that I like, kind of a populist theorist, refer to them as these like ad hoc pleasure communities. People gather together on the internet, on Twitter, for instance, which is kind of like a haven that rewards writers as far as social media goes, at least. And we're drawn to each other's work through authentic means, and that's where the dialogue comes from. No art exists in a vacuum. We read our friends' work, we react to it, art responds to it. Criticality is important, and having those kind of local communities, be it online or in real life, fosters that. I think, he contrasts this with the concept of a museum and spectators, which is like kind of the opposite of what we're doing, it's more of people in positions in prestige, tastemakers and whatnot, sort of, giving you this product behind a glass, and people are sort of invited to look at. They only, receive whatever the tastemaker provides. But like I said, now it's so decentralized that, I go on Twitter and there are so many writers, so many venues, so many presses that I've never heard of. But you can look at their engagement and you can kind of gauge the excitement around them, the energy. It's very organic. It's not something that you can invent. It's something that happens organically. It curates itself. And I think, that's going into the future. That is what we need to think about as artists, what kind of art world we want to live in. Do we want to be sort of beholden to this, centralized, prestigious institutions, be they academia or, corporate culture, or do we want to be in touch with the grassroots and do things like I know Andrew and I have done, which is like publish books that I don't think would have gotten published otherwise if we weren't willing to take risks on them. And hopefully I've addressed your question. No,
absolutely, and you've actually helped to push the the conversation a little ahead. So I'll take cue from your lead, and I will jump ahead and address the notion of oh, no problem. Address the notion of small press ventures as ventures and establishments that kind of seize the means of production and distribution. That's usually what we as small publishers do. We take a hands-on approach, and we make the book, we produce the product, and we distribute and share the wealth sort of ourselves. But Sarah, in our email exchange prior to this, you tied this notion of seizing the means of production to issues of class and privilege, which of course also come into question, especially tangibly on the British cultural scene. What was your experience of these issues?
Certainly in the most high status poetry readings, then they were funded by universities and professors, and the experimental writers were very much they were funded, and they'd probably been to the best schools, been to the best universities, and I applaud them, and I'm really good friends with them. There's nothing wrong with that, except they were then getting the funding, and when we had events, they would pay their friends from the best schools, give them that they get all the free travel, their expenses paid, and any of the writers who were, didn't have that kind of like connection, that old boy network almost, then they couldn't access so easily the support and the development. So one of the things that we really wanted to do in Hester Glock Press right at the beginning was to try and offer and develop writers from all different fields of life. I mean, and me and Paul have done a lot of community work in Bristol. I've done workshops for women with mixed mental health problems and no mental health problems all in together, and we made 3 anthologies. Paul ran workshops for men who couldn't read and write, and they were single dads from the roughest area in Bristol, and they wrote an anthology, and he dictated their thoughts, and it's like putting giving people a chance to put what goes on in your head, what is your life like, putting that into writing, making that accessible. There's something really sort of empowering where like all people have access to be able to put their ideas out in a inspiring way and to be creative. So it's not just the elite and the rich who have the opportunities to do that. I mean, me and Paul have both had to travel a long road to be able to do what we're doing, and we value it hugely. But there are a lot of privileged people who, say, oh, well, anyone can do it. Well, we've done it, we can, but we haven't had the entitlement and the help that their parents might have given them. We've had to fight every inch of the way, and maybe we've learned a lot from that, and we've had something to gain, and we can certainly want to help other people. But also in the press, we do want to include academics and middle-class poets and really successful poets. We want to try and get everyone in our press mixing in together so that kind of breaks down barriers between classes and groups of people, and they get sharing ideas, and so I get very excited about that. And we have done that. I mean, we've got some big famous poets that have that are in our press, and some men from Hartcliffe who can't read and write. So I think for me, I'm excited by that. Yeah, that's it.
Fascinating. Thank you, Sarah. Speaking of anyone can do it, Andrew, with the mass spread of print on demand, POD, it would seem that the main issue for publishers now is not so much book production, which kind of takes care of itself almost, has been mechanized and made as easy as it can get through technology. But the main issue is marketing and advertising, right? And you already mentioned there being a lot of noise out there and a lot of competing voices as a result of this technological ease of publishing. Is marketing and advertising what the name of the game is now for small publishers?
Yeah, I think that this is there's a lot of transitions happening within small press publishing, actually publishing as a whole, because the big publishers are seeing their sales drop, and small presses as a whole are taking over more of the market. Let's see, I'm trying to collect my thoughts about this. I think that, so I mean, anyone who knows how to typeset a book, and there's templates out there to typeset a book, anyone who wants to put together a cover, and again, there's ways you can put together a cover online, can upload their book to a print-on-demand program like Amazon's KDP, and then you have to fight with the whole Amazon system, because are you for or against Amazon as a company? And there's an ethical discussion there. There's Ingram Spark, which does work with Amazon, but it works with a variety of Ingram as the distributor works with a variety of bookshops and can put the book anywhere online. I feel like I'm circling around the question because there's so much to say about it, because I feel like a publisher used to open doors for you, but whereas I see now there's these small presses that are who are putting books out there, and they just they're not getting a lot of sales, or they're not getting the books out there like a press used to. And so I think that the key for publishers nowadays is to make connections with their fan base and to somehow amplify. I think that in my notes that I was sending back and forth, I said that the publisher is kind of like a stage, and publishing, their arm of publishing is like a microphone, and getting that message transmitted out to the world. But I do think it's quite complicated because, like I said, anyone who wants to have a book in print can have a book in print, and that just adds to the noise. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. And I don't know, maybe I should just stop it here because I'm so mixed about it.
No, that's brilliant and useful, and it actually dovetails into what I was going to talk about next. That is to say, the possibilities of small press culture, of engaging and intervening into the socio-political, opening up doors. Which ones of these options have you engaged and to what effect? I mean, to start in the United States, currently on the brink of major changes or more of the same. I mean, history would seem to suggest that the hopeful lesson that art-based cultural movements in the US, they thrive during time of opposition or oppression. Has that been your experience at 11/11, Andrew?
Sure. I think that there's something, let's see. So to backtrack a little bit, I think that there have been major cultural movements that was spurred on by art, looking at the history of punk and how that came out of from like 1969, Vietnam War, going through Nixon to Reagan, and then getting to the grunge movement. And anytime there's been a lot of suppression, opposition, when the United States has especially felt like it's a pressure cooker, that's where good art seems to be made. And I think that right now, with President Trump and everything that's going on in the United States, I think that we're on the brink of another type of movement. And talking to some of the other small presses, like Apocalypse Party, that's run by Ben DeVos, and I'm trying to think of some other presses. There's quite a few that in the recent years have come up and have been trying to amplify these unique and diverse voices. So I hope that answers your question a little bit.
No, it definitely does. And I was wondering what Manuel had to say about Expat Press, positioned as an altruistic enterprise with diverse socio-political engagement. What various forms has that taken? Which ones is it taking now?
Well, yeah, I don't know. We need to think about, honestly, about like who's disenfranchised. We've worked with writers from MFA backgrounds who ended up not pursuing a course in academia, writers from all backgrounds from all over the world. You know, we've given back when we could. When the protests were going on, we've matched both donations and sales and donated to mutual and bail funds. We did a fundraiser once with a mental health organization, advocacy group that does like science research, and raised a bit of money there. But like as far as socio-political engagement, we need to go further. What we need to do is just be the alternative to what's offered to, say, the privileged, or the more like conventional thinking out there. We need to be the avant-garde, the situationist international. We need to sort of we need to be a sort of ink blot that people recognize from all backgrounds, see themselves in, and feel drawn to. And spontaneity is important. I think when you're engaging the socio-political climate, so much changes so fast. The information is at a sort of critical mass now, and we're just like always like doom scrolling and everything like that. So we need to be spontaneous. So what I do is I invite people to submit to our platform. They do it, and I run a piece of writing every day, and it's a kind of call and response dynamic where I respond to their writing with a sort of poem that also responds in a bit to the zeitgeist or whatever is going on. And I think, yeah, we need to be spontaneous. We need to like kind of just, also be willing to adapt. I mean, when the pandemic happened, that changed everything. Andrew and other people saw the writing on the wall. We needed to put our writing online. I needed to start publishing writing 7 days a week and not 5 days a week. But it's also worth noting that a lot of businesses actually that are thriving and have thrived started in recessions, including the last one. And kind of circling back to Andrew's point about keeping this whole thing solvent, a lot of this small press culture has been driven by like hobbyists for a long time. I do think we need to think more like business people, in that we need to like fight over every margin. We don't need to be sharing with Amazon if we can help it. I've been pretty like adamant about this, and incidentally, I was about to give in. I almost had my arm twisted enough where I was going to put our titles on Amazon, and then they actually, just at the start of the pandemic, closed their Advantage program to invitation only, and and then it just seemed wrong to do anything like a price point increase or start charging shipping or anything like that. Controlling everything ourselves, we're allowed to sell everything below cost, offer free domestic shipping. I mean, we just have to be examples. We have to set the example for what we want to see. And I hope that answers your question, or at least circles the socio-political dimension you brought up.
Indeed it does. Thanks for that. I'm curious about this notion of us needing to be more business-like and be more like know thy enemy better, as it were. It brings me to the final kind of cluster of questions, or points for argument, this notion of a culture of democracy and the various modes of protest against the status quo. What can we, as small presses, and the dialogues that we facilitate, how can this help foster a culture of democracy in the age of fake news, populist politics, corporatization, etc., etc. Simon, you've stated that one of the roles of Hedra Felix is to publish voices which challenge disinformation. I was wondering how you go about that.
Sure. So it's simply what I meant by that was our editorial kind of policy. I just need to be able to give space in the magazine to writers who are not only interested in the remit, which is exploring the weird or the eerie in the world, and through experimental techniques, kind of practice it as well in a way, but also work which tackles kind of cultural issues, things that are happening to us now in the world. So stories or experimental writing or visual art that's somehow just displaying a kind of engagement, a critical engagement with political oppression against identities, or living a kind of subjectivity that is maybe challenged on a daily basis just because it's a minority kind of lived experience. There's stories that kind of touch upon subjects that people need to engage with almost subliminally. It's like we're not an academic journal publishing kind of critiques. We're fiction, and experimental fiction at that. So it's really about promoting democracy, I suppose, through the back door of your cultural practice. Just being a critical editor, making sure that you're publishing people whose voices matter and who should be given space.
On the notion of giving space, Sarah, you've been fairly explicit about the kinds of messages that Hesterblog wouldn't get behind. How does that relate to your need for debate on subjects that are close to the edge of politeness? How does that kind of cater to the whole notion of transgression, or the avant-garde after all?
Well, I certainly, my writing is very on the edge of what is polite, and people are shocked and horrified when they read it sometimes. And our other authors as well just do not uphold the status quo. And we've had Astra, her name's quite Papa Christodoulou, her book. Well, it's a futurist manifesto about the environment, and her previous press threw it out because it was a futurist. And I mean, to be honest, it's a fantastic book about the environment and about tackling head-on issues. Yeah, and it just that seems like a ridiculous reason, there seems to be real pettiness about things, but on the other hand, you do have to be really stringent. I mean, we had one author that sent a book cover in, and Paul thought it was a ghoulish child, and I'm like, no, that's a painting of a naked boy. He's about 11, and so we threw it out, and that was one of Egon Schiele's paintings, and. I don't know, it's like each case is individual, but the ethics are very important. And we want to challenge people. We want people to go into their shadow selves and because if people talk only about what is polite and what's acceptable and what they're comfortable with, nothing's it's not interesting for a start. Nothing's going to change, and I do believe that how you think and what you're breaking through boundaries and not just staying inside what is safe and comfortable is really important for our press, basically. And we're very sort of forward thinking, and not just being in the present time, but thinking about the future. Not like a lot of writing is about the past and what's happened in the past, but we're quite do like to challenge everything: the future, the past, the present, anything we can get our hands on, really. But and that does sometimes we like. Maybe people find that some of our books are a bit extreme, but we also have very high ethics, ethical approach to what we allow, and we debate. Me and Paul have quite vigorous debates about what is acceptable, and we want to push everything. We want to push the boundaries, but we don't want to support any kind of abusive or belittling, or And I know we've given voices to people that maybe they're not they're writing for the first time or something, and we mix it in with more famous writers, but we do give a platform for everyone, and in fact try to value people, and that might be challenging for certain for people to think that we value creatives, but that it works. It's been working, and I don't feel a bit shy now. Anyway.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. I mean, we do live in an age where an Egon Schiele painting can cause us to feel the same kind of alarm and shock and impropriety that it probably caused in its contemporaries. On this note of platforming, non-platforming, Andrew. If you say the publisher is a platform and distribution is a microphone for the author, I was wondering, was there anything you would no platform and not transmit? And on a related note, if you say you're not a fan of cancel culture, which I guess is the Scylla to the Charybdis of hate speech and hate mongering, etc., is the opposite of that. Where do you stand on that, and how does 1111 deal with these questions?
Yeah, it's. I think that a lot of small presses they receive a lot of submissions that are kind of on that line where, does this go too far? Is this transgressive writing for the sake of it being transgressive, or is there any literary value to it? Is this somebody who is being disturbing just to be disturbing, or is there a higher philosophy that they're accessing? So this is something that I put out early on. It's a quote from Karl Popper, and it's been guiding some of the decisions that we've made. And I have my notes here, so I'll read the quote for you. Unlimited tolerance must lead to the disappearance of tolerance. If we extend unlimited tolerance even to those who are intolerant, if we are not prepared to defend a tolerant society against the onslaught of intolerant, then the tolerant will be destroyed. The tolerance with them. We should therefore claim, in the name of tolerance, the right not to tolerate intolerance. And so we don't tolerate anything like white supremacy or anything of that nature. And that's something that's been something that we've spoken up about since the beginning. I think that John Treffry at Inside the Castle says something similar in his Twitter tagline, and you can read it there. But we feel the same way. But then as far as cancel culture goes, because I think that it's a delicate thing, and nowadays people are being canceled, and they're put up as a spectacle, and I think that, so here, let me just reference my notes again. Even though it's wrong to publish or promote hate speech, I'm not a fan of cancel culture, because when someone's canceled, it ends the conversation. Instead, that person should be held accountable, and we should have even more discussion. Their actions will not be tolerated, but we shouldn't forget that they're still a human being, even if they're a very irritating human being. Additionally, when someone is canceled, they become a martyr for their idiotic cause. and we shouldn't give them that chance to become a martyr for whatever belief that they have, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense to me. Unless there are more thoughts from our panelists, we had one question from the chat, which I believe should receive its due. There's a person wondering what's at stake for a writer now that art is mostly politicized. It's a question for the writer, more so than the publisher. I'm looking at Manuel here. Does he have a ready answer? What is at stake for a writer now that art is mostly politicized?
Yeah, I mean, well, politics are nauseating. Art is anything a refuge from that. I think that what's at stake for the writer in a decentralized culture where you have these monopolies of attention, of our attention spans or whatnot, what's at stake is mostly just the elemental, the individual. Writing has thrived in the darkest corners of history. It needs to continue to. I really do believe literature, more so than any other medium, is just it's so elemental because it's writing. It's not it's not collaborative, but it also, again, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. People respond to it, and sometimes we're surprised by that, but that's what art's supposed to do. Like I don't think that we need to pander. I think artists need to continue to be uncompromising in asking questions, in being dissidents, being disobedient, being simply inquisitive and challenging of, think about all the art like throughout history that's meaningful, that's challenged things, that's changed things. And then think about the fact that we're living in unprecedented times and we've never seen before, and think about that in terms of the art that you should be making. And I think you have your answer. We should be we should always be doing new things. And we shouldn't be like pandering to the status quo or anything like that. I hope that answers the viewer's question.
I hope so too, and I thank you, Manuel. We have about 3 more minutes for final thoughts and wrap ups. So I wanna give whoever feels like and wants to the chance, the platform to talk. If not, Simon, please.
Yeah, so I was going to ask a question. So I think I'm maybe alone here in that Padre Felix just publishes a magazine and nothing else at the moment. We do have a book planned for next year, but we'll see what happens. But so you guys publish books primarily, right? How does where you are, like even in Bristol, in your local sort of literary scene or your online community, what role does a magazine play? Are there like magazines that share a similar philosophy to your editorial's kind of mission and vision? And if so, what kind of conversations are you having with the magazine publishers?
Well, there isn't one that I know of in Bristol. They do pop up from time to time. There'll be maybe 2 or 3 editions, and then they kind of disappear, and it's all quite ad hoc. We have run events in Bristol that are experimental, anathema, but really, it's something we can always talk about. If we could connect up and get some inspiration or share some ideas, me and Paul would be very open to that. It would be very exciting. I'm very into weird. I'm definitely going to look you up.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to connect afterwards, and get the conversation going. How about you guys in the States? How is it with you?
It's similar to what Sarah says. A lot of things are ephemeral. It's just the nature of the beast now, with the internet and everything. Conversation about our like works happens on big platforms like Goodreads, happens on Twitter. Promptly, it's forgotten about. As far as magazines, I mean, we're building the universe from scratch, and so there really isn't like one magazine that reviews everyone or anything like that. There's always people excluded. I think for me, the most like powerful thing that I've seen move people to read the stuff we publish is word of mouth. Doesn't have to be in the form of a traditional review. Sometimes it's critique. A lot of people are into that, and they start blogs and whatnot, and they do kind of like these meta critiques of. I know like James Crendell Clark has something called criticalorifice.blogspot.com where he talks about like sort of the zeitgeist with regard to writing. But no, I mean, I think this is like a very fallow frontier, like the idea of magazines that engage particularly with what we're doing, at least in the US. I don't know if Andrew wants to illuminate something I haven't.
Sure, I know that we're out of time, so I'll just say that there have been a lot of online magazines that have come and gone, and I think that I would encourage those who have online magazines or zines to stick with it as long as you can, because it seems like there's ones that will come out for a couple issues and then they'll fall away. And I think that we live and publish within the same online ecosystem where we can help support each other. And so I think that there should be a call for more web-based zines that are international and worldwide. There's a very popular one in Minneapolis, but there's some politics, and I never feel like I'm actually talking to somebody. I feel like I'm talking to what can get them the most clicks. And I don't really like the whole idea of trying to get clicks, people clicking on to their magazine online. So I do think that you bring up a really good point. And I think that places like 3 a.m. is there needs to be more outlets like that.
Thanks.
Cheers to you. Cheers to you all. We're already running slightly over time. So let me quickly try and wrap this up on a 3 points that I noticed were recurring and might serve as a sort of a summary. I get the feeling that what is often cited as a weakness of independent small press endeavors, that is their amateurism, the fact that small press publishing is a free time activity that doesn't bring home the bacon, might actually be reconceptualized as its strength. Right, as only when free from the strictures of profit making and the capital can one be actually free in creation and life, right? So this amateurism, free time-ishness about it might actually be its strength, and it's one saving grace in the times we live in. Another refrain running through most of your responses, I thought, was a stress on collectivity. How publishing involves a collaboration, a synergy of forces, how there's this supra-subjective collective identity happening whenever people are involved in a press. Of course, an interesting subject for perhaps the next discussion would be what happens in the age of print on demand to this supra-individual collective subjectivity. Does it thrive? Does it wither? Is it replaced by something else? And I was also interested in how you as publishers, how you tread the fine line between refusal of hate speech and the dictates of cancel culture, and how you do seem to be open to taking risks, to being controversial in the right kind of way. Is there a right kind of way of controversial and a wrong kind of way of controversial? As I'm wrapping things up, I'm realizing I'm opening more and more gaps and pitfalls. But anyway, we're 4 minutes over time. PMF needs to continue and resume with its program. Stick around. It's going to be performances and theater art, and some experimental lectures. Speaking of academicism and anti-academicism, thank you all. Thanks to our panelists, Simon Hutchinson, Sarah Scott-Thorne, Andrew Wild, and Manuel Marrero. This was a publishing roundtable, and an experiment in itself. Hope this was worth it. Thank you guys for watching, and now it's back to the Micro Festival. Cheers.
coordinate the clap. You can coordinate the clap. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Toco tu boca. Con un dedo toco el borde de tu boca. Voy dibujándola como si saliera de mi mano. Como si por primera vez tu boca se entreabriera y basta cerrar los ojos para deshacerlo todo y recomenzar. Hago nacer cada vez la boca que deseo, la boca que mi mano elige y te dibuja en la cara. Una boca elegida entre todas, con soberana libertad, elegida por mí para dibujarla con mi mano en tu cara, y que por un azar que no busco comprender, coincide exactamente con tu boca que sonríe por debajo de la que mi mano dibuja. Toco tu boca, 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 toco tu boca. Toco tu boca, 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 me toca tu boca, toco tu boca, te toco tu boca, mira, cada vez toco tu boca, más cerca, toco tu boca, y entonces jugamos tu boca, toco tu boca. Mira, toco tu boca, cada vez toco tu boca, más cerca, toco tu boca. Y hay una sola salida, un solo sabor a fruta madura. Te siento temblar contra mí como una luna en el agua. Y yo toco tu boca.
Whose those best for and masturbating, it's actually poetry.
But why is sex such a part of your poetry?
Because poetry is a party, and the sex is pleasure, and pleasure is a party.
This is another poem about Prague. It's Czech Republic. It's a country in Europe. It's on Haje. Has anyone been to Haje before? It's at the end of the Red Line. I love that place. I would spend 5 days of the week there. I know everybody.
On the red line, I am, my hands crossed across the hard hat man who stands in the doorway of the subway. Haye, you foreign pavilion, I am in love with the soft parts of your concrete, your gobbled asphalt, your endless darkness in the lonely nighttime woe. And all day long you slag your morning thump in the underground nonsense. And I, another mirage visage. Not anywhere but here in the metro car the woman with the red scarf did not go into. Do you know me? Her, him, me? Do you know I? What is your voice like when the people have finally gone home? Are you listening? Haye. I want to feel you as the voice that you are. Haye. How can I know you? Are you near? Hollowed commuters move to the cloak nook of the Monday beats. All their jackets hung off shoulders of their mean mugging whiskey still smelling Sunday wigs. And here I am, as I do, going forever in hallways under shopping malls, getting to know all of your Hayes, Hodofs, Opotovs, just to be the strolling suit I have waited to show you. Everything you could ever want exists here in this metro, exists in the faces of the hard hat men who go home too and smoke their vitals, get soft in bed as dog with stick in mouth. Do you know these men, Haye? Are you listening? I listen for you. To tell me and loiter endlessly, with ears out, tongues in my pockets too. No money to go home to. What do you know about the hard hat man? The woman with the red scarf who did not go into the metro car? Do you know where I am going? Haye, are you listening?
I had artistic inspiration and all the best words and a yellow submarine-shaped record player, and I started feeling happy, like all the time. And now I only have a yellow submarine-shaped record player.
Tell me, what's its object paradise for you?
Object Paradise is a great ongoing endeavor to keep the Prague literary scene afloat.
Oh kid, I am beat! Today in the line at the post office, this woman in front of me was wearing a tight, ripped black dress. I could see her spine all the way from her neck to her ass. It was like a trail to the front of the line. Your scoliosis is beautiful. I forgot the rest. Oh kid, I am beat.
That's a great answer. And what night is it tonight? And where are we?
It's like you're in the universe.
It's a Friday night in Shishkov, baby.
It's a Friday night.
zavléknout se do sametu, nandat si ramínka a myslet si, že tvoje vzpomínka na to krásné nahé tělo nikdy neumře, ačkoliv by si mohl klidně. I need to be hit. I need to feel blood. I need to be trapped.
I am a trash collector. I'm a trash collector.
American breakfast, July 19th. In a diner which also sold Advil and Tylenol. 2019. 68% humidity. New York City, I saw a naked woman. And heard for the first time the trash can lid hitting the ground sound.
Comes by, waiter's like, what could I get you? Yeah, and the guy's like, could I have, I would like some coffee, but without cream. The waiter's like, all right, sure. You know, it's a very fancy restaurant. The waiter's like, yeah, sure. Goes back, you know, behind the counter, does his waiter thing. The guy sits there, waits, contemplates life. The waiter comes back, it's like, I'm really sorry, sir, but we're all out of cream. Can it be without milk?
The choice is here. To mobilize now, or sink, die and go extinct. In this mail terminal, urban malls eat fossil fuels, so please.
What's happening all the time?
I don't know, but I'm there for it.
Wow.
Florida, I am jumping in the neon December light, bopping to ambiguous teeth chatter asking how you are. And the man in the hallway devouring a beef sandwich does not know at what time the orgy is. Florida, you grumbling Scrooge, I want to impress you. Wear your clothes and let you undress me. Make the man unfold his tabloid just below the eyes and watch in secret jealousy. Florida, I am wandering still, here with my hands outside my pockets, grabbing your empty body, crying into your breast. And the lone Russian woman is there with her chin down, all tall in black hair. I want to wear your evening jacket, stay rather silent, and kick the lone aluminum can home. Flora, I am twirling on the platform. The man, the woman, and you are watching in ambiguous open eyes, and I am asking again in the December teeth chatter how you are.
How's it really important if you're a poet and you want to write a poetry? You always need your notebook, you always need your pen, but the most important thing is your hat. You can wear it like this, but if you want to be like a proper poet, you need to wear the hat like this. And then you have to go to the mirror like, oh fuck, God, I'm so good looking. The whole of the metro, I wore it under the whole way home.
We had some lovely talk, states exams, girls, the future, and then the appetizers came. So sweet.
How does the process of writing look like?
Always have a paper and pen with you. Always.
Always, even in the background. Where's your pen in your notebook now?
It's in my pocket, of course.
Yeah, okay, but it's uncomfortable to show me it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is
It's there,
in your
it's there,
pocket.
it's there. So because like I'm mostly a poet, I mostly write poetry, and poetry it's mostly irrational in the good sense.
What are you doing, please?
Oh, okay, so I'm cleaning, tonight I'm cleaning 2 kilos of rice, kind of to pay homage to my grandmother, who I don't really remember, although she lived throughout a quite large portion of my life. All I remember is that she really cleaned her rice thoroughly, so she would sit for hours and just look at every grain if it's worthy enough to be cooked. So I'm kind of recreating this.
Once in a lifetime opportunity, guys.
Above English, Dorothy's English skyline, just lying amply across your shoulders from the first time I saw you. I want to be replaced by the flower vase.
Scarf. Oh my god. Look at that scarf,
Found
guys.
this on the street and it is still dirty.
America. What I mean is that at 14 I loved it. I kept asking my parents what was happening. In the world, they didn't know. They got drunk a lot. You learn the most about people when listening to them tell stories you've heard them tell before. Father said, anything is possible with interns. He explained symbolism of chipped tooth in the dentist chair, dad culture. Saturday morning cartoons played in her head. Cell phones then did not fit in her pocket. Moms were girls too. At 17, Merve Pinar taught me how to say fuck her until she dies in 3 different languages. She licked Tootsie Pops in 1 bite and kissed like melting vanilla ice cream. At 18, I stole a cigarette from the casino ashtray of an Indian who struck it big. There were broken mirrors in the back room of the sex shop I asked advice at. Sarah took her vitamins with her birth control. I wrote her name on breakfast diner receipts. There were many places in America to see. On the weekends, I discussed breakfast with friends at breakfast. Ben said, try not to cry at the orgy. At 19, a do-rag and a skateboard pulled 3 bags of acid from lawnmower sneakers. I put Emily's freckles into my pocket and stumbled the cemetery river and threw rocks towards Paluto's tombstones, carving in them, "We still love you." The next morning, rolling over with a yoga mat for a blanket, a sledgehammer for a girlfriend, we tattooed the sound transit, "Man stays drunk," for 25 years to avoid the hangover. At 20, the woman who did not love me said she did and I loved it. What I mean is that I was coming down off ecstasy and had woken up still horny. She was in a miniskirt lying underneath me and I asked her if she had seen my yo-yo. Cell phones still did not fit in women's pockets. 1, that's fucked up. 2, that's a great way to make money. At 21, I asked the cop if he had Facebook on that thing and told him it wasn't me who drove the car through the Jack-in-the-Box backwards. Oh no. And from my living room, in the picture frame above my head, I held Bernie Sanders and cried like a liberal, telescoping utopia. Oh no. I cut math class and cried in the back row on a lecture of modernism. The single woman passed me a note that insisted we should attempt to raise young. What I mean is that at 22, I left America, leaving behind the legal Washingtons, extreme Carolinas, the woman I loved who was my mother, misplacing the Oxford deliberately. The hairs had been growing from my head, and they needed to. Grandfather said, "You'll be close to them over there." He smoked 5 cigarettes in all of his fingers and bought new teeth off eBay. I knew America was taking off her clothes and I was cold. After all, she had been wearing red in Pantone 2350C and drank $4.99 coffee at $4.99 in the morning. I wore her dress, looked like my mother when she looked like a boy. Fantastic, but alone. $600 euros, big wig at Red Eye, all of that on the tarmac. At 24, I was mugged and punched by a prostitute who loved me and I let her do it. She was twirling on the platform in rain that was new. She was beautiful and I could describe her face. She meant it. What I mean is that the doctor said I was in the Museum for the Blind. I had ran into the Michelangelo, felt the honesty of marble and concrete, all love-struck and rhetoric. I counted all 50 states of America on 10 fingers while emptying the bean can in the kitchen, fantastic and alone. She was naked and red-handed, 2 fists full of everything I could be. At 25, the sky as I could see it surrounded its dark but open arms across the horizon, and what I mean is that she was so close, I almost let her take my hand.
Gun, 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 they come for the girls. Gun, 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 they're banging your wife. Gun, 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 they want the world.
I know how to do 2 songs in the same time.
Oye, ¿tienes otra más?
Miss Winker, I am writing from the building next door in concern for your business and the state of your store. Miss Winker, I am writing in regards to the recent overgrown allotment that has found itself at the entrance of your door. Miss Winker, I would be surprised if you do not know me, though am aware I am the boy who buys eggs at 8, beer at 6, and should you know me as that, I would not digress. Miss Winker, to whom this letter is for, I am writing because when I enter your store you do not acknowledge me, nor the expressions on my face, despite our relationship. Miss Winker, I do not know your name either, to which I would hope you would understand. Though, Miss Winker, this correspondence, this letter to you, is to suggest that the state of your bananas are molded, and though I have tried to point this out to you, I did not want to interrupt you. You always count my money twice. Miss Winker, I would never cheat you. I am concerned of your well-being. It is dark in there and smells of off fish. Miss Winker, you must let the delivery driver know of the situation we are in. Miss Winker, I really think we could work this out. I have been thinking of the beans I bought, which were off for a month, and Miss Winker, I thought you should know that it really takes a long time for beans to go bad, and perhaps this letter finds you well. Perhaps you have a nice home you go to, or a favorite bar you stop in at. Miss Winker, I can suggest the all-night diner on 4th and Sycamore. The hollandaise is made in-house, though I do not know if you're vegan. And before I go, Miss Winker, I would like to follow up on our conversation the other day when I said thank you and good day, and you did not look towards me. Did you hear me? Is everything okay at home? Your family, yourself? Do you have someone who turns off the lights? I am concerned that you are neglecting the cobwebs behind the wine rack.
Looking that way, women on red chairs so complacently delicate with shopping list finished. So beautiful, Binarati. It's the talking day out there. The commotionable crowd of worn-out Hansas. I recently discovered the brown marmoted stink bug in the Czech Republic. It was the first documentation of the brown marmoted stink bug. I've already updated the Wikipedia page about it.
We must go to town now. Down to the town now.
Happening. Happy birthday to city who speaks spoke, to one like should do, her lights and running jewels. Hello, hello. Hap, 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 everything. Happening once again. The gigantic universe galactic, the city as naked breast, is out now, and shaped like Antarctica's melting mountains. Look, now. Happening again. City mouth street. Women with no underwear. Hey, look out where you're going. Hooray. Rock. Drags. The leash. was trotting cobble and my new shoes all guarded mosaic-like. Yotimer Lilac in the patio set for 2. Hey you! What are you selling? What you got? Let me get one of those smoke things. How much for 2? You know, for old Juniper and her crickets and all got real keen with landlady, all locked up in retort in my bedroom, and got all real in my head, you know. Well, my busted booze broke that window, you see, all swollen, swing full of bat. And here we are. You can see it, my building, that old top floor. And why be there when I can be here, perhaps now? The moon has taken off her blouse, and I am full resolute youth, dreaming of Little Italy and offer romantic dinners with her. These streets, the fire escape and her dress, the leaning rust on her beautiful building. Happening! Get out of your chair! The old slow town is opening her beating eyes and resting elbow at sunset, oh boy. How hungry I've been eating out of cans. And there's some mean mug lad jazzing his hand, jazzing his fork, down on the down avenue.
Tonight we have shared the mystic visions of the extra! The mouth and ear cannot exist alone! You are a poet, you are an artist, you are beautiful, and you matter! Thank you to all of our wonderful readers, our production crew, our performers, our dancers, our musicians. They are the most talented people I know. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We couldn't have done it without you.
Over the mountains, over the horizon, thousands of ants posed by the accumulation of autonomous bodies Each hill has a distinct color palette. Under each of them, the great disappointment under each of the findings, a mirror of one's own desperation, a blood puddle fed by open fingertips.
During the big melt, a huge defrosted body was found ashore in an astonishingly well condition from approximately 150 years ago. Since its unfreezing was initiated, scientists have been puzzled. After democratically negotiating about the future enterprises with this newly discovered object, they decided to put up observation decks and wait. Scientists interpret it as the incarnation of a self-referential social construct, containing more objects to be conceived as entities on a smaller scale. The giant findings look eternally inert, like an interface with access points, not updated for a long time. Due to the increased occupation of the research site by an ancient species of Earth, the ant kind, the scientists' assembly decided to refer to the place as giant. Ants are 400 times older than Homo sapiens. The humans' misleading cognitive facilities of self-individuation back then caused what became known as the Big Melt, and they made themselves disappear vastly from the sphere of the visible. The ants, with their sophisticated social organization and the synchronization of every individual's desire directed towards an anticipated goal, managed to systematically tap into giant territory, working through it, forming tunnels as well as access points, and thereby slowly turning it into soil.
The access points are the sentences that help to understand. These access points are accomplished by the ants that collectively tear up the giant on specific points. A collective entity enters the excavation site in columns, penetrates and pierces it with needles and rods to create entries, to make use of its inside.
After thorough debate, examination, and analysis, following conclusion came to be. Giant can neither be defined as an artifact nor as a natural object, as its roots keep being unclear. Observers came to agree that once alive, the giant was certainly an inaccessible and completely closed entity. But today, it can be observed to be an arrangement of multiple and diverse materialities. As common understanding has now long moved away from universalist and categorical thinking because it proved to be substantially insufficient, the research group easily understood the plurality forming the view they discovered. They faced an only seemingly unified entity.
Archaeology is the study of past conscious activity through the recovery and analysis of materials. Archaeologists study human prehistory and history from the development of the first stone tool 3.3 million years ago up to recent decades. Archaeology is particularly important for learning about prehistoric societies for whom there may be no written records to study. Prehistory includes over 99% of the human past, from the Paleolithic until the advent of literacy in societies across the world. Archaeology has various goals, which range from understanding cultural history to reconstructing past lifeways to documenting and explaining changes in human societies through time.
A few remaining neck-deep human archaeologists set off to explore the excavation site of the giant. By that time, individual liberalism and the cultivation of the self had long become historical, because they had turned into a repressive form of exclusion and they had completely disrupted systems of social organization. Some like to conclude, identity, as it was widely known, relies thoroughly on the existence of an other.
Majorities are often used to control other people. A shared identity is often materialized for the wrong, biased reason.
I should take the stone to my mommy. My mommy is an archaeologist. That means she digs for ancient treasure. She'll know what to do with an ancient treasure.
The human archaeologists came across this uncooled corpse of the giant that challenged their structural ideologies, which they've been dragging unconsciously into identity-enhancing narratives about their culture into the present.
Archaeology has been used by nation-states to create particular visions of the past.
Sadly, patriarchal structures from the past persisted to rule over the majority of modes of collective organization, and rusty notions of temporal continuity and chronology still dominate the common discourse about history and future. That they never found their way out of their own ever-repetitive, self-referential, lived and individualistic narratives made the specters furious. How we evaluate the past is essentially biased by the specific moral, cultural, and societal criteria directing how we live today and how society is organized in the present. We can listen to and tell stories about the past, but about the future, we can only speculate. We can put something together out of past experiences. This is why we have to decide which specters of the past we will drag with us into the future, and which ones we better perforate, bury, or leave behind. Inclusive xenofuturities can be spawned by welcoming the positively creative ghosts and condemning the negative and disruptive specters. Neolithic spirits aren't less legitimate because they are older. Archaeological sites and findings can unravel material specters of the past and enable their anachronological reinvocation to reanimate narratives. The acknowledgement of multiple modes of belonging, as well as stories of emergence, allow us to get a broader vision on what existence can mean.
Closed histories are the ones that bury the bodies of the dead nearby. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. Beyond any lithosphere lies the real body.
Some compressed, exhausted individuals can be found at the giant access points. Due to their scarce number, the corridors leading inwards rarely amalgamated and connected. Those individuals who found access before the big melt seem to have fallen into a lowly, delirious sleep inside, due to a ceaseless struggle with erroneous articulation and expression. They were left behind with mere ideas and flat concepts circulating in their minds. Self-reference does not help to bring the conversation further. A node of communication only works through the individual trust between referents. To understand what the other is saying, one may have to look beyond what is shown. Constant re-evaluation of present relations and events is therefore indispensable, so to repeatedly question the ideas underlying the actions we take or contribute to, be it actively or passively. This rapture is the intentional, hypothetical deconstruction of long manifested ideologies. As a method, it develops ideas that can be had about the future and the past. The head of the Tollundman, the hand of Obregon, relics that become accessories for analytical history. All specters shall be disruptured and freed from their wholly moralized glow. They should be taken by the hand and welcomed as one of us, as of now, and become ritually demythified. The strategy of identity construction shall be reappropriated as a disruptive tool. The rigid borders set around cultural memory define and encode progressive agendas. Vague promises of endless ongoing progress and rapture shall be uncovered. The possibility to duplicate knowledge should be considered and respected. All the incessant knowledge labor just opaques the immanence of the living spectre in animating the giant. Years of research on the giant presumed it dead. Although, since its defrosting, it was more alive than ever before. Looking back, one can say that the ants overtaking it were also the ones inhabiting and inanimating it. They found, received, and then venerated their new red queen. Queen isn't the right word, but it's the first word that comes to mind.